The day after I returned from the Lead Belt expedition, I received a phone call from the property owner of the land that includes the New Hope Cemetery, near where my third great grandfather, Abijah Sparks, lived when he came to Missouri from Tennessee in the 1840s and died before 1860. So it's very possible that Abijah Sparks is buried in the New Hope Cemetery. The landowner's name is Garrett Medlins. He graciously offered me permission to come on his land and visit the cemetery. Mr. Medlins has farmed the area for the last 30 years. And he told me that twice a year, a group of local people come and clean up the cemetery and make it accessible to people. He told me the cemetery was very difficult to find because there's no roads that lead to it. So he offered to help me find it if I should come down to let him know. So with the weather forecast looking good again, I've called him several times, but I haven't been able to reach him on the phone. I've called him for about 4 days in a row at different times of the day, but he hasn't answered his phone. I suspect he may be on vacation. So here we are in Sullivan, Missouri. This good weather won't last long. So with his permission, I'm going to go ahead and go down and see if I can find New Hope Cemetery on my own. I'm just getting back on the road after stopping at Merrimack State Park because I know they have cell service. And I wanted to make one more attempt at contacting Garrett Medlins, but he didn't answer, so we'll just go it on our own. So here we are back at the intersection of Highway 185 and Briggs Road, about 3 miles north of the Pea Ridge Mine and about 3 miles west of Indian Creek. Last time we made it a little over halfway to Indian Creek before we were stopped by a cattle grate and no trespassing signs. Garrett Medlins told me that those signs were posted by a crabby landowner and I should just ignore them. Garrett also asked me if I was related to Glenn Sparks. I told him I probably was if he lives in this area. And he said he did live in the area. He has since passed, but his widow still lives on his property. And the property is right where the road makes a sharp turn to the right and just before it gets to the cattle grate. So I did some research and I learned that this Glenn Sparks is the great-great-grandson of Richard Sparks, the brother of my great-great-grandfather, John Harv Sparks. There's also a Glenn Sparks Jr. that lives there, or lived there. I'm not sure if he's still there. I find it absolutely amazing that there are still descendants that live within a mile or so of where Abijah settled 170 years ago. There's a friendly farmer on his tractor giving me a wave as I go by. That's nice and reassuring. By the way, it's a Sunday in late August, about 3 in the afternoon. This is the property of Glenn Sparks. I learned from other family members that when Glenn Sparks acquired this property, probably back in the 1940s, that he had no idea that he was going to be living so close to where Abijah lived, and his great-great-grandfather, Richard Sparks. Here's where the road begins to get much less traveled. And the road gets rougher and rougher. And there's the cattle grate. No stopping this time. Mr. Medlin said I would see his place on the right after I passed the cattle grate. And he also indicated that I would know it was his place. I wish I would have asked him why. There is a place just to the right of me. There's a bridge across the creek to a farmhouse, so I better go back and check it out. There's the bridge and the farmhouse. Well, let's go see if this is Mr. Medlin's. Looks pretty quiet. I learned when I got home by studying the map that this is called Jules Creek. I don't see that anybody's here, and I'm somewhat thinking that this may be the owner that was the crabby one that Medlin's was talking about, so I think I'm going to take my leave and go back to hunting. Medlin's property must be further down the road. Just looking at the driveway to the right that goes through the creek. This doesn't look good. The creek crosses the road and it looks like it's been washed out and then refilled with very loose, deep gravel. I've been told that that's one of the more difficult off-road situations. But here we go. Wee-oo, we made it, honey. I hope we don't see much more of that. Although we do have to go through it again coming back. Very slippery ruts. More nasty ruts. It's about this time I really wish I already had that off-road riding clinic, but that's not for a couple more weeks. Well, join us again for part 2 of the Return to New Hope and see, hopefully, that we find Garrett Medlin's property